Righty then, Ruud Van Nistelrooy will be Manchester United manager, even if it's just temporarily, while the new manager, which does appear like it's going to be Ruben Amorim, is finalised and brought into place. So I wanted to have a look before tonight's game a little bit about what's he like, what's his tactical style, what's his philosophy, all that sort of stuff. I think it would be worth looking into ahead of tonight's game. So it's not the first time a former player has taken charge of Manchester United, even on an interim basis. We saw Ole Gunnar Solskjaer have an extremely successful interim appointment, which did lead to him becoming the permanent manager of Manchester United. We've seen Michael Carrick take charge for a few games. We've seen Ryan Giggs take charge for a few games. All of them while they were involved in the coaching staff. So certainly a trend of something that happens at Manchester United. And actually, in the interim phase, all of those managers have looked really good. So probably a little bit of positivity if it goes the way it does. I think Ruud's probably going to be in charge for probably 2 games. We've got Leicester tonight. We've got Chelsea at the weekend. They're big games for different reasons. And we really do need to start picking up some results. I would say more so in the league than the cup. But it's a big opportunity for Ruud because I don't know if he's sticking around. He might not know if he's sticking around. They might not have had that conversation with Amorim or whoever the new manager's going to be just yet. And it could be up in the air. So what Ruud has to do is put himself in a position where these games, even if there's only 2, there may be 3, these games set him up for either the respect of the squad and maybe a little bit of an elevation of his voice within that changing room when he comes to say something, if whatever he does and says goes right and goes well, or it sets himself up to go and get a job elsewhere should he not be kept aboard with the new manager. In terms of his philosophy, so he began coaching a long time ago, actually. June 2013 was when he took his first gig working with PSV Eindhoven's under-17 squad. He then joined Gus Hiddink's coaching staff after the 2014 World Cup. In 2016, he became a forward coach for the under-17s at PSV and on the under-19s, and then he eventually took on the under-19s manager. We interviewed him on Vibe with 5, myself and Rio. I'm trying to think when that was. It was probably around about 2002-ish, I think. Sorry, 2022 sort of time. And he eventually did take charge of the senior team just in the 22-23 season. He led them to a second place finish, and then he left the job a little bit prematurely before the final game of the Eredivisie fixture that season. Loads of rumours as to why that was, but fell out with people is the sort of the gist of it. While he was at PSV, he did win the Johan Cruyff Shield and the Cup. Does that compare to the magnitude of managing Manchester United? No, not really. But his work at PSV can give us a little bit of an idea on how he might want to try and set up this Manchester United side. He is a typical modern coach, if you like. He likes forward movement from his players. He certainly appears to favour runs from deep and third man runs and third man ball play, a little bit like what Ollie did, if you can remember back to that. Same with the formation, very much the dogleg 3-man midfield in a 4-3-3. He has also worked in a 4-4-2, interestingly, if he's going to play off the back foot a little bit. So you might see United line up in a 4-4-2 against Chelsea at the weekend, going just off what we've seen with Ruud in his previous role. He did look for overloads. That was something that was consistent in his play with PSV. He liked wingers that stuck to the touchline, chalk on the boots if you like, and he looked to try and stretch oppositions using that. He does like control in terms of possession, but he's not really anywhere near as obsessed with it as what we saw with Erik Ten Hag and certainly with other managers as well. He seems to set demands and expects teams to follow them. Ruud is ruthless. He's got an aura about him, but if you know about how he was, and certainly how he was with a young Cristiano Ronaldo, there's a fucking edge to Ruud Van Nistelrooy. He likes hard work out of possession. Team is compact. And he seems to get a little bit of a balance of attacking and defending and discipline quite well from what we've seen. It does seem like it's a combination of control and an aggression, and he seems to put a lot of emphasis on the players being empowered themselves. Not a bad thing. Now, there's obviously a Dutch DNA in this, with him being Dutch and all, fun little thing. And there's an attacking ideology that still sort of resonates with what people would call a Dutch style of play. It's not a major deviation from Ten Hag in terms of the style of play, but I think they'll be ironing out of some of the elements where we have been deficient with Erik Ten Hag, or at least an attempt to. He does like his teams to build out and play through the thirds, and possession in those areas is crucial, but it's the wide play where I think you might see a development from what we've seen with Erik Ten Hag, where United's overloads in those areas and wide play just hasn't quite clicked or been anywhere near good enough. Once Ruud's teams got the ball into midfield, I would look and expect to see forward runs, and I would look and expect to see the team attempting to get 2v1s and isolating individual defenders. His teams go with a single holding midfielder, sort of a decoy sometimes to attract a press, while they look to try and create 3v2s on one other side of the pitch, or a 2v1 on one side of the pitch. And that differs to Ten Hag's approach, where he would look to try occupy and engage as much attacking space as possible and stretch laterally rather than try and stretch in a certain particular zone at once. And sometimes that would mean going longer to the quicker players. Ruud still will play forward and direct to the wingers, absolutely, but there's a lot more purpose, and it'll come central and switch rather than often going into those areas and staying in those areas, if that makes sense. There's going to be similarities. There's they're both from a similar background tactically and philosophically, so there's going to be a lot of crossover, probably why they wanted to work together in the first place, but there will also be differences, and the differences might be in the switches. It might be in the quality, the intensity, and the timing of the switches. Once they were on the ball, and it was Gakpo and Madueke that they had on the wing, you would see them trying to beat their man 1v1. That's something that he likes from his wingers, and something that hasn't really been successful at United for a while, actually. The PSV team would also look to try and overload on one side of the pitch by pushing a fullback up and looking for either an overload or an underload. And they would have the attacking midfielder look to be the one that supports the winger for a pass back to the inside. He seems like he thrives off creating numerical superiorities in that fullback sort of area for an opposition. And then it's runs that will sort of disrupt the opposition's shape, forward movement ahead of and off the ball. The problem is when it goes bad in those areas, because you've flooded numbers forward and people are making runs forward, it doesn't have that ability to be able to contain fast counters, which is why in my preview yesterday I went through Gatti and the team, because a little bit like what we saw last season under Erik Ten Hag, and obviously Ruud wasn't even here then, you quite often see transitions where you're like, shit, we've got nobody back. Now, you might adapt that with it being the Premier League, and it might be different with it not being PSV. But that was something that we saw. And obviously the fullbacks, there's differences in how Ten Hag and Ruud employ their fullbacks. Ten Hag loves fullbacks that invert. One will invert, one will try and get high as possible. Ruud likes them to come and support the play. They may still invert. They may still occupy sort of the half space, but they're only doing this when there's an overload available to be created, not just running patterns, if you like. The key point to remember here, I think, is that PSV's fullbacks weren't the primary outlet for width in the team. It's the wingers. It's that the fullbacks are more of a supporting act here, so they're gonna go to the wide players first. Also, with Ten Hag, the team creates symmetry in the sense of the 3-2-5 or the 3-1-6 will be equally distributed across the pitch to try and occupy spaces, and then we'll look to try and find which of those players is available and isn't as marked as the rest of them. Ruud's not asked. He will go with asymmetric progression of the ball. If that means that we have to overload on one side and underload and maybe just cover off on the other side, we're doing that. That's going to be something that you might notice if you're in the ground tomorrow. I think you might notice that. So tonight you might notice that. I think that might be more effective. We will have to see. In terms of the past experience and the man management, like I said, there's loads of talk from Carrington as well that there's a real aura around Ruud. He's certainly a lot more charismatic than Erik Ten Hag. He's played under some of the best coaches to ever do it. He seems to have hopefully learned a little bit of a man management trade, and he's worked through the ranks as a coach, working with all sorts of different age groups. Ruud himself said at United under Sir Alex, he was always pushing us forward, look forward, play forward, get crosses in, shoot on target. As a player, I loved the way that made me feel. I wanted to play like that, and I wanted to transmit that same feeling to my team and to my players. And I think, that's a reflection of what he's about as a man manager as well. He said that he values the relationships with players as individuals. He sees them as people rather than as robots. He's had Sir Bobby. He's had Sir Alex. Hopefully they've had a real impression on him, because that's two greats that you can learn off there. And I think that's one thing that you can say Ten Hag fell down in, the man management. The personal relationships didn't appear like they were there with Erik Ten Hag. So the appointment of Ruud, it felt inevitable at times, didn't it? It really felt like it was obvious that it was going to happen at some point. It does make logical sense. You can see that there's been a pattern of this in recent years at United, but not just at United, it happens everywhere as well. We don't need someone that's a complete flip. The players kind of still need to know what they're going to be doing. Maybe it's a little bit of a tweak. Yeah, do you know what? Put an extra body in that area. Yeah, don't worry about that far side. If they switch it, they will get over there. Like, something along those lines is probably a positive. But like I said, it is what it is. Someone's got to take charge while they appoint a new manager. I'm excited to see what Ruud can bring. I hope Ruud's excited. It's a great opportunity for him, whether he sticks around, and I hope he does. Or he ends up having to move on from this. I hope whatever happens in these couple of games that he's in charge, it sets him up to be successful, because that means United have been successful in this little window that he's been here, doesn't it? And I hope he gives some youngsters an opportunity. Like I said in the preview last night, Amas, Fletcher, someone, just pluck one of these youngsters out and give him a go, and let's find out what they're about. Because sometimes the positivity of a young player being given a debut is enough for us as fans to really get going. And the energy in Old Trafford tonight is going to be on the upwards anyway, because we're all going to be behind Ruud. I can't imagine there's a single person in the stadium tonight that's like, can't be arsed with this dick. Like, everyone loves Ruud Van Nistelrooy as Manchester United fans. We all wish him well, and let's hope it starts tonight. You know what I'm saying? Right, see you in a bit. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.